Hello everyone, this is Untold Force, and first of all I apologize for having a bit of a cold, but today I'm going to assemble the UCM Stronghold mount from VKB. Now this particular one that I'm going to put together is the Gladiator type mount, so I'm just going to pan a little bit to the left here. You can see that is the Gladiator base with a Space Combat grip attached, and the mount next to it is a fully assembled UCM short Stronghold Gladiator mount. Now there's two versions of the UCM. There's the short and the long version, and the other part, if it says Gladiator or STECS or Gunfighter, that is just the type of mounting plate that is attached. If you get a UCM of any type, even a mouse pad one, you can change it into a Gladiator or Gunfighter or STECS Max by purchasing a different plate, which is this part. There's actually two sections to this plate, and I'll go over that later. But this is going to take a while, so I recommend you grab yourself a cup of coffee or a nice beverage, sit back and watch. I'm not going to cut this video. I'm going to roll with everything, so you'll get the full experience as best I can give it to you. So first off, that mount is heavy and it can be sharp. So what I recommend you do is have a nice, in this case I have a silicone mat. This is just a soldering pad. You'll also want to have some tools. They include the tools, but it's even better if you have a T-handle Allen or hex wrench. This is a 3mm, which is the one that you're going to need. And if you have a small wrench, that's great too. You will need an 8mm wrench. They include it in the package, so if you don't have one, that's not a problem. It's just more comfortable. And also, if you drop small parts, it's good to have a pair of tweezers. All right, that's pretty much all you need to get started. And I'm just gonna go, and again, I apologize for not sounding very good, but that's what happens when during wintertime, everybody gets sick. So I'm gonna change the aspect. I'm gonna just go to wide angle here and show you. Here is the UCM Stronghold mount. And we'll just open this up. I just put one together, so it should be pretty straightforward. I have a full packing list on the Discord, the VKB Discord, so if you're interested in finding everything, including the quick installation guide, you can always refer to the Discord for that. So let's begin. Just gonna unpack the things. It's packed very, very nicely. Let's move it up a little bit. Oop, there we go. So this is what I refer to as the main mounting plate. Now this is what attaches to the rest of the UCM. You're gonna put 2 machine screws in each side to hold it into it, but it has a pivot point right here. And that pivot point allows you to rotate your Gladiator, in this case, because it's the Gladiator version, it allows you to rotate it left and right. So there's going to be 2 screws in here. So there's actually 2 parts to the mounting plate, and they're going to have 2 screws, one in here and one in there. We'll go over that later. So that's just the lower mounting plate, as I call it. They may have a different word for it, and I apologize if my nomenclature doesn't agree with what they use. Now, this is what I call the actual Gladiator mounting plate. This is the upper or rotating plate, because this is the part that sits on the lower plate and rotates. So you can tell that what we'll do is we will line it up. Eventually the holes will be lined up, and you can rotate the entire thing a fair amount left or right for comfort. So those are the mounting plates. So we'll take those out, set them to the side. That's pretty much the last thing that we're going to deal with. I'm going to pull the flaps here and remove the entire Stronghold mount. And I'm going to set the box to the side. And let's open this up. They have a little punch, finger punch here, so you can put it there and open it up. Great. So I haven't opened this. This is what you're going to see whenever you purchase it from VKB. You're going to have something that already looks like it's pre-assembled, which is great, right? I'm going to take all the parts out, so we'll get to these things. But I'm going to get to the big part right here. And this looks like the pre-assembled mount, right? Well, it is most of the mount, but you're going to have to take this entire thing apart because this is assembled just for shipping. Okay, so there's no need to worry about how this is right now because we're going to take this whole thing apart. So I'll set this down here. And here's the other bag. And now I always recommend look in your box, make sure you have nothing else in there, and we're good. So I will put this empty box with the other empty box, and let's take a look at what we have here. So we have the mount, or at least the shipping configuration of the mount, and in this baggie we have the set of common UCM short. The -S is for the short version of the UCM, the common UCM short hardware. And here, this is for your particular mounting kit, the kind that you bought. This says GL for Gladiator. So this is the Gladiator set. We're going to set this aside with the mounting plates, those two plates that we set aside, because we won't need this till nearly the end of the setup. I'm going to take the protective packaging and set it aside, and let's see what's in here. Okay, so we have, I'll show these in just a moment because they are left and right sides of the same thing. Here, let me hold these out for you in orientation. What these do is these will hold on to your desk. These are half of the clamping mechanism. The other half is right here, which we'll disassemble. And this part will need to be manually adjusted later for the size of your desk, because this clamp gives you fine adjustment, but for setting the overall size, you'll need to adjust these. So we'll put these to the side right now, along with everything else, because we won't need them just yet. And the most important part that we'll need is in here. I'm going to open up the common UCM mounting hardware. And I'm going to take the things out one by one. If you don't have a wrench like I showed you, then this wrench is the correct size. I believe it's 8 millimeters. And if you don't have an Allen or hex key, this one will do the job. Again, if you have a T-handle, that's even better, but this one will work. I'll go through the different components. These are what I call the plastic fittings on the sides. If we look at the other Gladiator or the finished mount, give me one moment. Let me pan over here. I'm going to zoom in real quick. Notice how all of the screws on the sides have these nice black plastic fittings there. Those will go, so we'll put one of these plastic fittings on each machine screw. There may be a more technical term for this, but it's just, you could use a washer, but it looks much nicer to use this little black fitting. Probably don't even need a washer, honestly, but VKB always encourages it, so that's great. So again, that's the black fittings. I'll go through these later. Let's go and fix this. Great. All right. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of different screws. They're going to have different numbers on them. So we'll just take everything out at this point. Common question is, what are these? Let me see if I can focus this. These are spacers. So there's two slightly different sizes of the actual plates that we see. And these spacers allow you to change the width of the VKB plate. If that doesn't make sense now, don't worry. Here's more screws. Here's nuts. Here are much smaller square nuts. And you're going to see a whole bunch of smaller, like M3 size screws. Those are for actually mounting the modules to these plates. So like these style plates, those are the going to be used for like the M3, the much smaller screws, as well as these M3 square nuts and everything else. They are all for fitting different modules on there. So if you have, let's say, some of the GNX size modules, like the SEM or side extension module, the THQ or throttle quadrant, the FSM-GA, or even the stem, the STECS stem. Those are all great modules to mount on here. And you would use those smaller screws to mount those. Then we have some larger washers, more smaller screws for mounting modules. These are important to pay attention to because these are spring washers. Notice how they have a little cut in them. I don't know if you can see it very well, but they have a small cut in there and they act like a little tiny spring. Those are what they call spring washers. I sometimes call them locking washers. I will use that term interchangeably, so keep that in mind. More of the smaller screws for mounting. These are the really wide washers that we'll use later. And here is the last bag, some more M5 screws. Okay, so now that we have everything out of here in the UCM-S bag, I am going to put back the following because you won't need this until you actually mount the modules. I'm going to put all of the M3 screws, so the M3 by 24 screws going back. M3 by 18 are going to go back in here. M3 by 10, they're going to go back in here. The small M3 square nuts, they're going to go back in here. The M3 wing nuts, those are going back in here. And I'm just going to keep out all of the M5 size. Yep, these are all M5 size. And I'm also going to put these spacers back in here. So all of these things are back in the bag. I recommend always keep track of that if you can. And now, at this point, I'm just going to empty out each one of the different sizes of screws onto my silicone pad. So I hope that, come on, there we go, autofocus works. All right, so there are two really important things to keep in mind for the M5 screws, machine screws. You have M5 by 14 millimeters and M5 by 16. These are going to be used all the time for this, so put them in the largest containers you've got. I'm going to put the M5 by 14s over here, and I'm going to put the bag above them so I keep in mind what they are. I know you can't see it there because it's too small, but it just helps me keep track of what's going on here. And then here's the M5 by 16s. I'm going to put them over here. Put the bag over here as well. And then I'm going to put the flat washers. We'll be using those a fair amount. VKB usually will send you a few extras. In my experience, I have about 2 extra of each of the screws and spring washers and flat washers. And then here are the spring washers, the locking washers. I'll put them over here. These will be used a little bit later. These are the I don't know if you can see it, but they're the countersunk screws. So they have large triangular style head, different than the button style heads of most of the other screws here. So I'm going to put these, since there's only 4 of them, they can fit into one of these small parts. And I appreciate you sticking with me and watching me as I try and keep everything organized, because if you don't keep things organized, it quickly becomes a mess. And I don't want that to happen. Here are all the nuts that we'll be using. The large washers. Here's the really wide washers. And finally, all of these plastic bits. since we'll be using these guys a lot. I'll dump them over here. Great. Okay, so now at this point, if all you have is the VKB Allen wrench and regular wrench, that's great. Or hex driver, that's fine. I'm gonna go grab my T-handle driver and my regular wrench and put these aside. So, got my T-handle, which is pretty much all I need right now, but I'll also put my regular wrench there and these tweezers in case everything becomes disastrous. Okay, so now undo all the hard work that VKB did for you. I'm just gonna get all of these. So here, let me see if I can do it this way, so you can see a little bit better. I'm just gonna loosen all of the screws ever so slightly, just to get them going. And there we go. At this point, let me just pan a little bit. Let's see if, is there a way I can get this in focus? Better in focus. There we are. And you know what? We'll zoom out. Perfect. Give you a slightly better view. I hope that you can see everything that's going on. Again, I appreciate your patience with this. So here I'm going to just use the T-handle to take out these machine screws. Now, you can keep the black plastic fitting on these. These are all going to be M5 by 14. So I'm just going to put them all down here. And we'll take all the parts out and set them on the side as they become disassembled. So you might be thinking, wow, I could do a much faster job with my power tools. And you could. But you could also really mess things up. And if, at least by doing this, by hand, you get a feeling for each screw that you're driving in and removing. So if the threading isn't right, well, here, I'll move this over a little bit so we can hopefully get a better view of it. There we go. So, especially when you're putting the screws in, if the threading isn't right, you can at least know that you have to move it a little bit so you can get that threading in there properly. So here's another piece that we're going to remove. Now we'll rotate it here. You can see that there's just a few more screws to get going. So I'm just using the side of the T-handle to loosen it ever so slightly, so that way I don't have as much trouble whenever I use the main part. I can kind of go pretty fast. But yeah, you could, I've seen people use drills with the torque limiter set as low as possible, or if you have a really fancy impact driver that you can turn off the impact, and they have all sorts of fancy stuff out now. But honestly, if you go and have a cup of coffee, spend some time putting this together, it's kind of a nice Zen activity that you can just focus on and appreciate, because this is, in its own right, it can be an enjoyable experience. And it is one for me. I just put that other mount together, the one that I showed you in the beginning. I put that together earlier today, and just to practice, so I'd give you good advice. Whether that remains to be seen is another matter entirely. So we'll take off this piece. I'll go through them and show you all of those. So finally, we also have this mount part and the dual clamp system. So we've got all these. So what are we looking at? Well, this clamp will be at the top of the mount, And this is kind of, this is how you'll apply and remove your entire mount system. The two clamps will give you a little bit of play. If you look on the side, they can go up and down a fair amount, but you'll need to kind of use these side pieces whenever you put it together for coarse adjustments to get it close, and then you use the clamps to finish that off. And then this is what I'm going to call them. So you're going to have two of the mounting bracket or mounting plates. And if you notice, I put them side by side. Oh, here, let me move some things so you can see. They are not the same height. They are different. Well, they're not the same width. They're different widths. So one is meant, the smaller one, is meant to have an additional mounting bracket, giving it extra width on the inside, while the larger one does not. So if we look over at the fully completed mount, let me go and pan over to it. We can see that the one with the VKB logo that says VKB Sim.Pro on the front is the smaller of the two, and that will be in the lower position. And the other wider mount will be in the upper position because it only has to go through, or you only have to put the screws through one of the side plates instead of both. If you look on the one that has the logo on it, you notice how there's two side plates there. There's the lower side plate and the upper side plate. And let's look at that real quick. So we'll take a look at the side plates. So this will be your lower piece. This will be your upper piece. And then you have side plates. These are your lower side plates. These are the ones that will actually hold the mounting plate for your stick. And then you have the upper plates, which are going to hold the, they're gonna hold this bracket together, okay? So, knowing this, I'm gonna start with the upper piece because the lower piece we're gonna work on a little bit later. And also you need to determine what length you want for your mount because this mount can be adjusted in height quite a bit. So, sorry, by length I meant height. So the height, or in essence how tall the entire mount is, will depend on how much overlap you choose to have between the upper and lower side pieces. So if you want, this would be the longest recommended configuration right here. And if you want it to be shorter, you can make it shorter up to a point. And I don't, I think it's about there. If I keep, yeah, I think that's the shortest that this can go. But you have the Stronghold mount itself will tell you your recommended configurations. So we're gonna start, I'm gonna put this together in the longest possible configuration, or sorry, not longest, tallest. There we go. So I will take the smaller mount plate and put that down. And what we're gonna do is just very simply start putting these things together. So in this case, we've got the two side pieces. And notice how there's print on one side and not on the other. We're gonna have the print side facing out, okay? So in this case, this is gonna be the left one. And we're gonna put 4 of the 14mm screws that we just took out, M4 by 14s. We're gonna put those in. So I'm just gonna put them in by hand ever so slightly, just to make sure the threading's good. And we're not going to tighten any of the screws up until we get pretty much the whole thing together because it's easier that way. So we're going to put these 4 screws in. Let me just make sure the focus is good there. There we go. Yeah. So we've got these 4 screws are just, I mean, they're not even hand tight. They're just in there a little bit, just giving us some idea of what we're dealing with. And now I'm gonna flip it over to the other side and repeat the same process. So I'll put this here, put that there. start putting in these screws. And when you get your first screw going here, you want to make sure that the threading is good. Always want to check that threading because you don't want to be destroying your mount. So this is a pretty tough mount though. It's very solid. Okay, there's another screw. There's our third one. And there's our fourth one. So as you can see, we have the beginnings of a mount. Not too hard, right? So now we'll go to the next piece, which is we will take the lower halves, the two lower halves, and the parts with the numbers are going to go on the outside. So this is going to be our left piece, and that's the arc, which goes on the inside. The numbers go on the outside. So there we go. That's going to be our lower piece, and then we're going to grab our lower mount adapter plate. Oops. Okay, well, I can just put it on the side here. And what we'll prep is we're going to prep some of the longer M5 by 16 screws. So if you look at the difference, it's only 2 millimeter difference between the M5 by 14 and M5 by 16. If it goes through, and here I'll give you the rules for how they do it. If you're going through just one side piece, so if you go through one side piece and not two, then use the M5 by 14. If you go through two side pieces, like if we were to put this here, notice how we have the two side pieces here, and then this is going to go next to it. We would need the M5 by 16, just for the added length. So I am going to prep just a couple of the M5 by 16 screws. So these again are the longer ones. So I'm going to put one in through here, and I'm going to line this up so that way I have that hole right there. I'll show you. Let me hold it like this. Notice how this hole right here lines up. So I'm going to put the M5 by 16 in through here. And just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to put a washer. So on this side, I'm going to put a washer, a locking washer, and a nut on here. That's going to keep this thing together a little bit. I'm not even going to tighten it, just hand tighten it. Just put a little bit of hand pressure on there. So repeat the same process on this side. So I'm going to take an M5 by 16. I'm going to put the plastic fitting on it. And put that on the inside. And we'll just get that lined up there, put that there. Great. And now I'll put this washer on. I'll put the locking or spring washer on next. And finally, I'll put the nut on and tighten it up just a little bit. This is so we can get the lower panel on more easily. And to get the lower panel on more easily, it's going to fit into if I put it on the side, you can see that if I adjust it just right, I can get the two lower screws in. So I'm just going to put the lower screws in real quick just to get it sorted out. That makes it a little bit easier. And then I'm going to put 2 of the upper screws on. And let's see if I can get these squared away. Or did I put them in the wrong position? And the answer is I did. Notice how what I did is, if we look here, this is kind of that's the location where I'm going to use as my pivot point for the lower half. I put the plate on a little bit too high. And so I'll take this off. I'm also not looking at any of the guides right now, which I really should be looking at, because what we need to do is we need to get it lined up, and there's so many possible positions for it that you kind of have to make these determinations for yourself, depending upon the height of your desk, the height of your chair, all of those things. So now what I did was I lowered the central plate down one more set of holes, and that looks perfect for me. It looks like exactly what I want it to. So now I'm going to take the M5x16s, because they're going to be going through 2 of the side pieces instead of 1. Put 1 in here, and another M5x16, and this should go up here. So now we can see that that's looking good. We have a triangle of screws right here, and we have 2 more screws holding this plate into the lower plate. Now we're just going to repeat the process on the other side. So we're going to have, we already have this 1 screw in, so we're going to make sure to put those 2 in and another 2 right there. So since again this is only going through 1 section, we can put the M5x14s in. It's much easier whenever I can use my right hand, but every time I use my right hand, I'm blocking your view, so I'm sorry about that. There we go. That's perfect. And that's one of the reasons why you just want to make sure you're doing this by hand first instead of just grabbing a drill or something like that, because getting the proper fit for these can be kind of tough if... there we go. I can feel that. That's good. Perfect. So we can see those lower 2 are in, so we need 2 more, and those are going to be the M5x16s, the longer ones. So we'll put 1 in here, making that triangle that I showed you on the other side. We're going to put 1 part of the triangle in here. Great. And the last part of the triangle in here. If you want to see the triangle, here's the triangle. There's the triangle right there, and then there's the lower 2, and we're looking pretty good. So the next part I'm going to put in is the upper 2 clamps. Since this is only going through 1 side, we only need the M5x14s. So I'll prep 2 M5x14s and just do those hand tight. Not even hand tight, just get them in there loosely. The reason it's better to put it in loosely is that all the plates go together much more easily, if it's in a loose configuration like this, and then you can tighten it all up at the same time, which is pretty easy. So we have those 2 screws in there, and now we'll put another M5 or another 2 M5 by 14s in here. Notice how you will want the clamps, the screw type, so you can screw the clamps down on top, because your desk or your table or whatever is going to be in here where my hand is. So here we go. So that one is not seated right, and I think, there we go. Just needed to find the threading for that. Great. So the next part I'm going to put on is I'm going to put on the, well, you know what, we'll wait on that, because what we'll do is we'll wait on putting on these, the grip pieces, because they're going to stick out on the sides. So if I put them here, they stick out. Notice how it sticks out quite a bit, and it makes it harder to mount the plate itself. So we'll wait until later for that, because I like keeping everything nice and relatively flat while we're assembling. Normally I would put the plate on while we're like in a better position while it's at the edge of the table, but because I can't do that here so you can see it, I'm gonna put it on here in this orientation. So the plate itself is going to be held on by 4 machine screws, and there's going to be 2 here and 2 on the opposite side. And what we'll do is we're going to notice how you can adjust the angle. I will hold this up, so even though it's really wobbly right now because it's not together, there's an angle. It can go from 0 degrees, which is pretty much flat, or should be flat, like about the same level or angle as your desk, to -15 degrees. So you can angle the entire joystick down quite a bit for comfort, which does help a lot. I usually run -10 degrees or so, just because I find that it's extremely comfortable. All right, so at this point, because we're actually mounting the plate, we are going to grab the, well, we're not going to be putting this plate on just yet. Sorry about that. I jumped the gun. What we will be doing is we will be grabbing the UCM screws. So in this case, I'm going to take the M5 by 16. So one of these, I'll put this together. And instead of using the regular washer assembly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it in here, and then I'm going to use the big washer, the real big one. And we'll put that on this side. And then after that, I'm going to put a locking washer and finally a nut. And we're going to put that together. And not tighten it up too much, because you'll want to be able to move the whole thing up and down. And we're just going to repeat that 3 more times. I'm going to grab an M5 by 16. Put the M5 by 16 in here. And notice you can move this entire thing quite a bit. The actual mounting plate has a tremendous amount of, it can be moved quite a bit here. So I'm going to put, I have that big washer on, then I'm going to put the lock washer on, and then finally I'm going to put the nut on here. So just like the other one. So I've got this entire thing together here, just tight enough so I can keep that one piece. I'm going to flip it over and repeat the process. I'm going to take the M5 by 16, put the plastic fitting on the outside, take that big washer, take the lock washer, sorry, spring washer, as VKB calls it. And finally, get that nut, put that there. Tighten it up a little bit. And this is the last one for the plate, M5x16. Thread it through, put it on. Got this big washer, spring washer, and finally the nut. Great. So we can see now that the plate is on and everything is kind of loose, which is okay. Let's start tightening this up a little bit. Make sure that everything's nice and flush. Here, let me see if I can give you a better angle as we tighten it up. Just gonna tighten up all these screws. I'm just gonna take out all the slack on this side, get them in a little bit, then I'll repeat the process on the other side. And since you're just looking pretty much at my hand, it's kind of boring, but just tightening it up a little bit. And now we'll flip it over to the other side, repeat the process. Just take out all the slack. And I will tighten these up a little bit more once I get everything fairly tight. Great. Okay, so now everything is fairly tight except for the plate, which I left some play in so we can adjust that later. But if you look at everything else, it is pretty tight, but I'm just gonna go and finish tightening it by taking the side of my T-handle and making it and tightening it down. I'm not gonna over tighten it. Of course, this is all up to somebody's prerogative. Ooh, that one's a little loose, and I know why that's loose. Because this is one of the ones that we put the nut on. Notice how, if I lift it up here, there's the machine screw on one side. This one is the screw, and then on this side is the washer, locking washer, and nut. So these two will need to be tightened with your wrench. So in this case, what I'll do is I'm just gonna hold the hex. I'm going to hold the Allen wrench here and tighten it up using my wrench here. There we go. That's good on that side. Now we'll do this, repeat the process. So just going to hold this and tighten this up. And there we go. That's nice and tight. So now we're just going to tighten everything else up. And honestly, the UCM is overbuilt to a fantastic degree, where even if you don't have every screw in here all the way, even if it's not super tight, it's still probably going to be fine. I love this thing because whenever it's tightened and together, there's practically no wobble on it whatsoever. I'm more worried about the desk being the wobbly thing than I am about this mount, because it's just so solid. And part of that's because the dual clamps. And we already tightened that one up. I'm just going through making sure that everything is nice and tight, because we're going to put on the coarse or the lower arms for your desk or table. Again, apologies for my arm just being in the way, but being right-handed, that kind of is how it goes. All right, so now this thing is solid. Like I cannot feel it move except for the plate at all. It's very, very, very solid. All right, so next thing to do is to take your UCM and put this part on your desk and measure where this needs to be. So I've already found that for my desk, I need to put this right here, where the last number that I see is -40, okay? So you'll need to go and figure that out for yourself. And once you make that adjustment, you're gonna take the countersunk screws. So they're these guys. Gonna put the countersunk screws in here. Notice there's no plastic fitting on this. The next stage is that we're gonna take oh, that was my cat. We're gonna take one of your regular washers and a spring washer and a nut. And we're gonna put those on there. Just like everything, pretty much everything else. So there's the washer, there's a spring washer, and here's the nut. Now, you wanna make sure that this bit is nice and tight because this one is gonna hold a lot of the weight. So I'm not gonna tighten it up all the way just yet. Just need to get my washer over here. So washer, spring washer. Of course, these things are tough to grab. The day that you cut your fingernails is always the day that your mounts come in and you're like, man, I could have used just a little bit more fingernail to do this. And so we've got our washer, spring washer, and nut. So I'll hold it up now that I've kind of have it hand tight, but we want this, so your desk is going to be in between this part and here. And if we look on the inside here, you can see washer, spring washer, nut, washer, spring washer, nut. So there we go. I'm gonna repeat the same process on the other side now that you've seen it. I'm gonna try and go a little faster. Get this done. All right. There's one washer. I need another one. Okay, and here's the spring washers. So there's my washer, my spring washer, and finally I need 2 nuts. Okay, so washer, spring washer, are you on there? Yes, you are. And nut. And you could also argue that, yes, putting this together in a different orientation would be better. It's true. I could definitely flip the whole thing upside down, but then I don't have a good way of mounting my camera. So I'm just using my cell phone for this because this is kind of a tough thing to get. So here we go. That all seems to be together. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna use your Allen wrench or hex driver, and I believe that's the wrong way, but let me just double check this. Yeah, that's the right way. Okay, so now I'm just gonna use the wrench to tighten this up a little bit. Tighten this up a lot, actually. This is a kind of an important part of the whole system. There we go. That's on nice and tight. And just repeat the process on the other side. Here we go. Great. And finally, this last one, get it nice and firmly in there. And just one more. There we go. Great. Okay, so your UCM should now be pretty much assembled in the right configuration. All we need to do now is put the Gladiator plate on the bottom. So at this point, you can take all of your UCM hardware. I'm just going to move this to the side. Very carefully place it down on the desk and put it back in the bags. My M5 by 14, let's see, I've got 2, 4, 6 screws left over. If you received a different number or or if you have extras, it's not a problem. I have 2 M5 nuts left over. Put those back. I have 2 locking washers or spring washers. These guys. Let's see what else I have. I have 2 regular washers. 1, 2. I have 2 M5 by 16 screws left over. And I have a whole bunch of those little plastic fittings. I'm not going to count them because I have tons of them. Let's see. Yeah, I've got more than I need, which is probably good because if you lose these little black plastic fittings on a carpet or something, you could have a lot of trouble finding them. And of course, that last one doesn't get picked up. Great. So I'm going to take all of these little bags, put them back into my UCM main bag, just for organizational purposes. And now I'm going to take out the Gladiator or GL set bag. If you recall, we took a look at this bag before. This has all of your Gladiator plate screws and the mounting screws for your Gladiator. So I'll take this out. And for this one, they do not provide you with duplicates or extras. So whatever you see here is exactly what you get. So there's 4 nuts. There are 6 washers. Those are flat washers, not spring washers. And then there are 6 spring or lock washers. And there are 2 thumb screws. Notice the thumb screws are these black, I'm guessing aluminum. Yeah, it looks like aluminum. Here, I'll hold those up so you can see those. Yep, there's your 2 thumb screws. And finally, you have your sorted, these are both, there's a countersunk screw and a bunch of socket head screws on here. So that is a little different than what we've been facing with everything else because those were all button heads. So let's get this plate on. So the plate that we affixed is not really like super tight here because you can move the whole thing forward or back or up or down. Notice how this is really adjustable. So I've got the angle. Here, I'll show you the angle. See the angle right there? Got that angle adjustment. And we can also move it forward or back. I'm going to push it so it gives you a little bit more room for you. So that way it really sticks out there. Great. What we'll do is we'll put the plate on. So the way this works is that if you look at the actual Gladiator plate, notice how there on one side the edge is it has a little bevel on it and the other side doesn't. So put it this way because we want that so that's a countersunk screw that we're going to put in here. So notice that screw has the triangular head. That triangular screw is going to go in the middle there, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to follow the same regular procedure. We always put our washer on, and then we'll put a spring washer or locking washer as usual. And then we're going to change things up a little bit because this is where we're going to put this, your thumb screw, because this one can be adjusted by you on the fly. So I'm going to put that on there. Tighten it up a little bit. And then on the top, there's going to be another screw. So all these the socket cap screws are all going to be the same size or same style. And this one, we're going to put the socket cap screw in through the bottom. So this is where the screw is going in. And unlike the other screw, this one's coming out the top. This allows you to rotate your entire Gladiator left or right for comfort. Notice that. That's very cool. I understand, Zizou. I understand. It's very exciting. Okay, so what we're going to do is follow the same procedure as usual. Put a washer, put a locking washer on there, or spring washer, and then you're going to put your second thumb screw on top here. Now this will, if you loosen both this thumb screw and the thumb screw underneath, you should be able to rotate this much more easily. And if you don't want it to rotate, then you can just tighten these things up and it shouldn't rotate as much. So we can, if I loosen this a little bit, notice how I can rotate it now. If I want it to be locked in one spot, I just tighten it down and now it's not going to rotate. Great. So there's one last thing to do. That is to mount your Gladiator. So I have a Gladiator joystick right here. And if you notice, very conveniently, the 4 holes match up. So I'm just going to put the socket cap screw in there. And I'm going to put this here. And put the locking washer there. And finally, I'm going to put the nut down here. So again, it's just going to be, we're going to have socket cap screw, Gladiator, mounting plate, and then on the bottom is going to be the regular flat washer, spring washer, nut, as we've done the entire time here. I'm going to repeat the process three more times if I stop dropping everything. And at that point, I'll be ready to go. You'll be able to go flying or engaging in space piracy or whatever kind of wonderful things you're going to do with your Gladiator. Okay, so there we go. There's that. And there's that nut. And repeat the same for the other side, because we do not want an errant child or person, or, you know, of course the child is a person, just a small person. We don't want people or animals or anyone knocking your Gladiator off, so that's why we want it to be nice and firmly affixed to your desk mount or table mount. Nice and tight there, well, hand tight. And we can tighten this up later, of course. So here's the last of the screws. Put that through there. People often ask me, do I like the UCMs? Well, if I didn't like them, then I probably wouldn't have like 4 of them. They're really good. They are extremely heavy duty, which I like. I also feel that I like that they have the dual clamp design. I had some cheaper mounts that I got from Amazon before, and they just didn't hold up. And looking at extrusion, if I were to make my own extrusion mounts, they need a lot of parts. So the final step here would be to take, in this case, of course, you'll want to take your or your Allen wrench and your regular wrench, your 8mm regular wrench, and just tighten those up. Are we using a slightly different size? Are we using a 7mm? Oh my goodness. Okay, so the socket cap appears to be, yep, okay. You'll need a 7mm wrench for the actual nut on the bottom there. Give me 1 second and let me grab that. Let's see if I can find a 7. Oh, here's a 7mm wrench. Perfect. I'm just going to double check that this is in fact a 7. Let's see. Yep. So let me just make sure it's on the right way here. Oh, nope. I have it rotated around. Okay. There we go. All right. So you will need a 7mm wrench for the nut that is on the bottom there. Or you can use an adjustable wrench and just use the, let me hold this. Let me hold it here. It's much harder than it looks when you're holding the whole thing up. There we go. That is nice and tight. We'll tighten up the other side. Then be ready to go. Doing this, let me just double check, make sure I got it the right way. Yeah, oh, nope. Flipped it around using the ratcheting side. Here we go. That should be the right side. There we go, yeah. Perfect. And I'll just tighten it up a little bit more. And one more. We'll just, last one. Great. Okay, now you'll notice that your Gladiator, this base, is not going anywhere, but I did not tighten up the plate. This adjustable plate really should be tightened up. These 4 screws, so this one, this one, this one, and this one should be tightened up once you attach it to your desk. Put it on your desk, find out what angle you like. Do you like it to have a steep, like negative angle, like negative 15 degrees? Do you prefer something that's a little bit less, like maybe a 5 or 10 degree angle? And also how far forward or back. So let me pull the entire plate forward so you can see. Notice how at this point it is going to be just enough for you to have a room to maneuver in the front. Let me angle this up a little bit more. Here we go. Okay, so I pushed it almost as far forward as it goes. I'll push it as far forward as it goes entirely. And you notice that you've got just enough room to get your finger in front of here. And this will enable you to be really close to your desk. So that way you don't have to sit too far back if you move the plate all this way forward. If you move the plate back, here, I'm gonna push it back again. Notice how far back it can go, and down or up. So you'll want to make those adjustments once you install it. And also you can install your modules once you, you can install any of the modules pretty much. I would install them here, and I also 3D printed my own plate so I could extend them up above here so I can have another row of modules. But down here, I would not recommend installing anything, especially if your Gladiator is going to be pushed up pretty far forward. But I hope you enjoyed this hour-long video. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to record it for you. And if you have any comments, please let me know in the section below, or you can drop by the VKB Discord. Again, I am Untold Force. Thank you for watching. Fly safe.